My name is Dakota Oswalt, and I'm doing a biographical informative speech on Alexander Hamilton. And he was born on January 11th, 1755, or 57. The date is not exact. And he was born in the British West Indies on the Caribbean island of Nevis. His mother was Rachel Levine, married to a John Levine, who was an abusive husband. She was forced to marry when she was young, and he had her arrested and put in jail for 6 months on charges of adultery. And when she got out, she went off to St. Croix, where she met James Hamilton, Alexander's father, and they both had Peter, his older brother, and Alexander. And when he was young, his father abandoned him in 1766, and his mother died 2 years later from sickness at the age of 38. And when he was 11, he worked at a mercantile company, and his boss was so happy with the way that he was working that he used a connection he had with a newspaper editor to raise money for him so he could go to America. And he arrived in America in 1772, and at the age of 16, he enrolled in the King's College, where he was more focused on the politics of the area rather than getting the education. And in 1774, he left from King's College before graduating to join the Continental Army. And he grabbed Washington's attention in 1777 because of his excellent work in the Army and his expertise with battle strategy. And he married Elizabeth Schuyler in 1780, where they had 8 children together. And in 1781, he left Washington's staff, and he came back later on to help with the Battle of Yorktown under Marquis de Lafayette. And he was in command of a small light infantry battalion. And at the Battle of Yorktown, Marquis hit one side of the compound while simultaneously Hamilton hit the other side and forced General Cornwallis to surrender. And according to history.com, it was supposed to be a night attack, and it was supposed to be a surprise. And basically, they did what they could to keep it as quiet as possible, so not using their guns, keeping the flashes and sounds to a minimum, using bayonets when they needed to, so as to not alert the enemy of their presence. And after the war, Hamilton went back to New York and practiced law, where he passed the New York bar and started his own attorney's place of business. And in 1787, he was invited with 2 other delegates from New York to go to the Federal Convention in Philadelphia, where they were in the process of ratifying the Constitution and talking about how they were going to run the government of their newfound colonies. And he gave a 6-hour speech based off of his vision of a strong centralized government, and was hounded with criticism of it being basically a monarchy. And him and James Madison and John Jay wrote 85 Federalist Papers based off of trying to ratify the Constitution, Hamilton of which wrote 51. And in 1789, Washington became the first president of the United States and appointed Hamilton as the Secretary of the United States Treasury. So he was in charge of the monetary problems within the U.S. And in 1791, the first Bank of the United States, which was loosely based off of the Bank of England, was a huge success with economy growth and all the problems dealing with that. And he had many problems within his life, one of which was his son's death in a duel trying to protect his father's honor and reputation, and a sex scandal he had at one point. And a lot of his problems were faced with powerful people because of viewpoints, one of which was Aaron Burr. And he challenged Hamilton to a duel because Hamilton was insulting him in public, and he was tired of it. And Hamilton said he wasn't going to back down, so they had a duel. And Hamilton was mortally wounded and died the next day to his wounds. And a quote from biography.com from a letter that he wrote to his wife a few days before, says, quote, "Fly to the bosom of God and be comforted. With my last idea, I shall cherish the sweet hope of meeting you again in a better world. Adieu, best of wives and best of women. Embrace all my darling children for me." And despite all of the troubles he had in his life, especially near the end, he was still a great politician and did our country a great service.